We thank you for your love, for your goodness. You are creator of all powerful, and nothing is too hard for you. Father, we thank you for the city of Dunedin. We thank you for the beauty of the nature. We thank you for its heritage. We thank you for the people here and for their creativity, Lord. Father, I know that you love the people here very much and you want the best for them. Father, I thank you too for the leaders that are here in this room today, Lord. And I pray for your blessing upon them. I thank you for their time and effort and energy that they put in working together to make the city a better place, Father. Father, I ask for them as a team that you help them to work together well. Help them to encourage one another, to listen to one another. Help them to understand each other's views. Lord, help them to work together really well as a team, particularly when they're making difficult decisions. Please protect them from discouragement and from disunity when it hinders the way forward. Father, I pray that you would grant them your wisdom and courage as they go about refining goals and the vision for this city and its future. And I pray, Father, that you would give them joy as they lead and serve the city. In your precious name.
Moved. Hawkins, Benson. It's just the other way around. Yep. That correction.
Your Worship, I'll move that Part A, items 1 to 4 and 6 to 7 of the public forum of the minutes of the Community Environment Committee held on 13th of October 2014 be noted.
Second to Councillor Peake.
And shall I do it all at once? Probably easier.
Yep, okay.
That the following Part B item of the minutes of the Community Environment Committee held on 13th of October be approved, that being item 5. And that Part C, item 8 of the minutes of C&E held on 13th of October 2014 be taken in a non-public part of the meeting.
Second to Councillor Peake. Discussion. Put it, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. I note there's no item 6 effectively. Item 7, Infrastructure Services Committee, Councillor Wilson.
Your Worship, I move that the minutes of the Infrastructure Services Committee meeting held on the 14th of October 2014 be noted.
Seconded. Councillor Lord. Councillor, discussion? Councillor Bannis.
The issue regarding the rocks at Warrington and the legal advice that we've had that suggests that, and we were given this advice, amongst other advice, that if we were to temporarily close the road, that would be legal. And I accept that that's quite good advice, and I don't have an issue with that. What I'm not convinced of is, given that we have a history of having had the LaRose Road closed illegally, that continuing to close it can actually be viewed as being a temporary closure. So my understanding is that you can temporarily close something, but it has to be only for a short period of time, and there have to be good reasons for that. What we have is not quite that situation here. So I wonder if there is any way that we can actually get confirmation that what we have done is actually legally rigorous. I unfortunately had to leave the meeting early, but I heard the full, I believe, testimony of Mr. Garbutt, the lawyer, and my interpretation of what he said was that although you can temporarily close a road, and that this is quite legal, I'm not sure that what we've actually done falls into that category. And I'm wondering if there's anything that we can do as a committee to put this legal issue finally to bed.
Well, for my part, my understanding of the advice was that a temporary closure was legal. It was illegal up to the time we made a decision. We had two options in front of us. Both of them were legal, and the committee made a decision, and it's a legal decision. So I don't personally see any reason to go back and ask Mr. Garbutt to repeat what he said. If you're moving, this is a Part A item, so you can vote against this if you wish.
Right. What I would like is your confirmation that you believe that the fact that we had it closed illegally for so long and have effectively extended that closure with this temporary doesn't make any difference.
That's my understanding of the advice we received on the day.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Well, it's just that, as I understand it, Mr. Chairman, this is a motion noting the minutes of the meeting, not a motion to reopen or relitigate what was traversed at the meeting. And I think it's quite clear that this appears to be an accurate record of what transpired. And so,
just to make a raised a point of order, what's your point of order?
the point is that the line of questioning is irrelevant. This is not, it shouldn't be admitted on the basis of noting the minutes of the meeting, which is the record of the meeting.
Well, in this case, I've been asked a question, I've answered it. So, Councillor Bizzy.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm grateful for Councillor Van for raising the issue, but because it potentially does open up the issue for further debate, maybe. But he asked the point as to whether what the council was doing was illegal. I intended myself to raise that very issue, but I have been informed that the committee, because it's Part A item, can vote, and it's on behalf of the council, that the road be temporarily diverted from traffic, and so that was the decision. I think what Councillor Vandevers is asking, is that decision legal? And you're saying that it was accepted by our legal advisors.
Yes.
And if the item is noted today, I guess that'll be the end of it. But is there some way that we can actually test the legality of that? Or are you saying that it was illegal?
What I'm saying is that my take on the advice that we were given was that the two options open to us were both legal. And Mr. Garbutt was present through the entire meeting, and had we made a decision that wasn't legal, I'm sure as our legal advisor he had a responsibility to tell us that, and he didn't. So clearly my conclusion is that it was legal. He was there. He's the one we're taking advice from.
Thank you.
Right, any further speakers? Right, I'm going to put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Item 8, Economic Development Committee, Councillor Starks.
I move that the minutes of the Economic Development meeting held on the 20th of October 2014 be noted.
Second to Councillor Bizet. Discussion. Put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 9, Finance Committee, Councillor Thompson.
Your Worship, I move that the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held on the 20th of October 2014 be noted.
Second. Seconded Councillor Calvert. Discussion. Put it, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 10, Audit and Risk Committee. Councillor Thompson.
I'll move firstly that the public part of the minutes of the Audit and Risk Subcommittee meeting held on the 10th of September 2014 be noted, and 2, that Part C, items 7 to 15 of the minutes of the Audit and Risk Subcommittee meeting held on the 10th of September 2014 be taken in the non-public part of the meeting.
Seconded Councillor Calvert. Discussion. Put it, all those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. On to the minutes of the Community Boards. Item 11, Waikowhati Coast. Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that the minutes of the meeting of the Waikowhati Coast Community Board held on the 24th of September 2014 be noted.
Seconded Councillor Wilson. Discussion. I'll put it, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 12, Otago Peninsula. Councillor Peake.
I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Otago Peninsula Community Board held on 25 September 2014 be noted.
Seconded Councillor McTavish. Discussion. I'll put it, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 13, Strathtyre. Councillor Law.
I'd just like to move that the minutes of the Strathtyre Community Board held on the 25th of September be noted.
Seconded Councillor Wilson. I'll put it, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Mosgiel Tyre Community Board. Councillor Wilson.
I'll move that the minutes of the meeting of the Mosgiel Tyre Community Board held on the 30th of September 2014 be noted.
Seconded Councillor Lord. Discussion. I'll put it, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 15, Chalmers Community Board. Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Chalmers Community Board held on the 1st of October 2014 be noted.
Seconded Councillor Wilson. No discussion. I'll put it, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 16, Saddle Hill Community Board. Councillor White.
I move that the minutes of the meeting of the Saddle Hill Community Board held on 2nd of October 2014 be noted.
Seconded Councillor Wilson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. On to the reports. Item 17, report of Dunedin City Holdings and Subsidiaries. I'll invite Mr Mackenzie up. Is there anything you want to quiz, Mr Mackenzie?
Yes, I'll just say a couple of things. So these reports are following the council briefing that was given on 30th of September, and they've all been approved by the appropriate boards of the companies. So apart from that, I'll take any questions. If there are any.
Question, Councillor Bampers.
In fairness to Mr Mackenzie, I have sent him only at lunchtime today at 12:06. In fact, several pages of questions relating to the annual reports of DCHL Limited, and I apologise for the lateness of these, but the problem is that when you get a stack of papers like this and you start to get your head around what's actually in them, that the amount of time that we have to actually ask appropriate questions, or ones that aren't just going to waste staff time, is severely limited. Now, Mr Mackenzie obviously hasn't had the opportunity to respond in the last couple of hours, and it's reasonably detailed. My question as a councillor is, one, is there any chance of us getting these just a few more days prior to when we get this opportunity? And if not, do we get another opportunity to have a crack? Because I really don't want to put Mr Mackenzie on the spot. He's put a lot of work into this, and there's a lot in it. So,
well, to answer your first question, interestingly enough, this issue was raised at the IOD/LGNZ governance group governance seminar, and I just talked to the CEO this morning about this, that it would be preferable if we could have reports earlier for council meetings and for committee meetings, and we will be working through a framework to endeavour to achieve that. So I'm not sure if that precludes the need for me to answer the second question, but certainly It's a point well taken, and we will be. It was raised then. It will be.
If we can't get the reports earlier, and I realise that there's an inordinate amount of work and deadlines to get those reports, can we have the meeting to discuss them a little later? Is that a problem, or has that got a time constraint as well?
Well, the point is really a gap between receiving the reports and whatever meeting is appropriate being sufficient to give councillors, as you say, time to absorb what's in them and then raise any questions in a timely manner. So either the reports will come earlier or the meeting will come later.
So that issue may be addressed for next time.
Well, we don't know when we're going to be able to address it, but yes, it's certainly on the agenda.
All right.
Can I please?
I don't think it's fair.
Can I just add one point? All of these reports have been on the DCC website since the 30th of September.
That would have helped. But even so, it's a small number of days.
September.
Well, actually, that's a month.
Sorry, September?
Yes.
Oh, pardon me. That would have been quite sufficient.
So are you able to, you obviously have a range of questions, are you able to distill them down into a couple of generic questions for the clearly you don't want to go through all the detail.
No, and I don't want to put a lot of people who may not be that interested in detail anyway through it. Mr Mackenzie has very kindly offered an hour of his time to do that. In the meantime, is your recommendation, given that I am unhappy about some things here, that I make that clear as an abstention vote? Or what are my options?
With regard to these ones specifically, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, the option you have today is to, what's the recommendation? We receive a note, but the option you have is to vote against receiving a note in it.
Tony.
Thank you very much for that. Given that these are available so much earlier on email.
So they've been on the DCC website.
Okay. Is it possible that if they're on the website that we get them emailed as well? That can't be hard, can it? I understand that printing these things must take some time, but that would have solved.
I'm sure we can find a mechanism for informing everyone when they've been put up.
Thank you very much.
Right. Councillor Benson.
Just a question, first of all, in respect of the hard copy of the documents that we have. Would I be correct in assuming they're all printed in Dunedin?
Pass, I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
It would be useful to be informed about that, just in terms of attitudes.
Yes.
And the question I have relates really to, initially, to the DVML. Thank you. My apologies. To the DVML report. On page 7.
This isn't the DVML report. This is the DCHL holdings and subsidiaries.
Oh, so you're doing them one at a time?
Yeah. There's two separate items.
Oh, well. All right. It's just that my question compares the two, and I wanted to ask, I can do this. If, when I look at this later report, I see that in the DVML remuneration range, there's no one in the top two bands currently. The highest amount being paid is in the third band. Can I assume that attitude, if that's a reflection of the whole period rather than a reflection of some timing issue, can I assume that similar strategies are being put in place to address the issues that are visible in the holdings report when one looks at remuneration bands?
Well, Dunedin City Holdings technically doesn't have any employees now. So in the future years, there won't be any salaries paid.
But when I look at the Dunedin City Holdings annual report, I see that in the total group, and that's what I'm referring to, because that's reported on page 70, there is a top band of 470 to 479,999, and there's one person in that salary band. We all know who that is. What I'm asking is, I consider that offensive in the context of this authority and its companies and its subsidiaries and so on, when I compare what appears to be happening with the similar information about DVML, where the top two bands have become vacant this year, if that's a reflection of the actual whole period rather than a timing issue, and I'd like Mr Mackenzie to confirm that, if that's a reflection of a change in attitude, is the same attitude to be applied to the whole group?
I don't think I'm in a position to answer that question.
The chairman's not here.
Yes. So what I can say is for the DVML is that the band is for, the way the accounting standards work is it's for what was paid to employees for that financial year. So there will be a timing issue in DVML.
So I can't assume there's been a change in attitude in terms of the remuneration levels.
I can't say yes or no. So.
I won't press it, but there's an issue here if we're expecting these questions to be answered before we note a report, that the chairman isn't here to be able to answer that.
Just a general question on the group financial statistics that you find on page 18 of the DCHL report. Is it possible that in that fairly concise list of statistics that we could have a clearer picture of what subsidies we pay to DVML and DVL? We have total interest, subvention and dividends paid to the council, but it's not that clear what the total of the range of different subsidies and subvention payments that go the other way.
So on that page, third from the bottom, shows after tax costs for Dunedin Venues Limited, subvention payment of 5.25 million. So that is the only subsidy, well, it's not a subsidy, it is the only payment from within the group that's made.
The only payment from within the group, did you say?
Within the DCHL group.
Within the DCHL.
Because that, what you're referring to there is the Dunedin City Holdings only.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there was a further question over that which I'll talk to you about later.
Yep.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm just happy to move if you want, so we can get on to the next one, which is actually DVML.
Okay. Moved, seconded Councillor Staines. The recommendation on page 17.1, Councillor Wilson. That's what you're moving.
Yep.
Discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 18. Now we're on to DVML and DVL. Do you have anything to...
Basically, these accounts have been approved by the appropriate boards.
Yep.
And audited.
Any questions on that? Councillor Peck.
Just on page 4 of the DVML's annual report, reference to the 750,000 community access funding, and could you just clarify for me where I might find a report about how that was spent and if it was fully spent?
Well, there's nothing in the annual report about it, but my understanding is that they're reporting back to council on it on, I think, a 6-monthly basis. But Nicola Penfold might know more.
Ian? He's just walking on.
Sorry. Nicola?
You've been asked a question. Did you hear a question?
Oh, right. Sorry, Nicola, how often does DVML report back to council on their event attraction fund? Is it 6-monthly?
Sorry,
That's not what you meant.
No. 750,000 community fund.
Oh, yeah, sorry, the community fund. Yeah, no.
You're happy with that? That's what we're asking?
Is it in there? Yeah.
Councillor Vanders.
The community fund to increase the access of community events to the stadium, as I remember it, was printed in the annual plan. There was a couple of pages of it, and all the different events were actually itemised in that, along with their cost. This was the first year that we actually gave that quite significant fund to them for community access. My memory of it was that virtually all of those events were events that had been happening prior anyway. Is that your memory of it?
I can't comment. I've only been in council 9 months. I can't recall what the statement was doing beforehand.
Well, that kind of answers Mr. Councillor Pete's question, I think.
It's not actually mentioned in the report, but clearly there is an ongoing review of stadium and operations, and there is an intention to bring that report back to council, or the outcomes of that review back to council. I just wondered whether there is an update on that, because it was going to cover things like the community fund and how that was working, and the things that covered. So
that report is coming back to you this month. At this point in time, what it does is run through a number of options for the stadium, given that, as we reported when the review was kicked off, the current budget was, I think the term we used was fundamentally optimistic. Given that we have 2 years of running under our belts, or a little longer, and we have continued to have to put extra money into the stadium, it was looking at actually what is the realistic budget for the stadium and what should happen at the management level in terms of operating. So we'll update you on that management review which has happened, and we'll update you on here's the options that we looked at, and here's the funding implications of each one, and here's the recommendation for what we should do going from here on. So that's this month.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Worship. Just following up on Councillor Vandevs's comment about the Community Access Fund, that essentially it's only paying for existing activities that happened before the fund was established. I think that's why I understand Councillor Vandevs's comment. On page 4 of DVML's report, third paragraph under community, it says community events utilising the $750,000 community access funding increased from 4 to 96. So my rough calculation, that's 92 more events in the 13-14 year than what there was the previous year. So I just thought I'd share that.
Councillor Hawkins, now we're still in questions here. I don't think this has been moved, has it? No, so we're still in questions. Have we got a question?
Yeah. Thank you. My question was about the community fund as well, and it came up during the annual plan discussions, the idea that that fund be made available to community groups to use other venues within the DVML group other than the stadium, whether that was the Port and Lounge or the Town Hall or others. I was just wondering whether any traction had been made on that conversation.
So the stadium report is only focusing on the stadium, but there is a piece of work going on around the other venues that DVML also operates, and that question is being looked at as part of that work.
Councillor Calvert.
Again, on the community access, is there any way we could get any report back to do with the stadium market, which we're apparently supporting, if you can call it that, to the tune of $250,000 a year, which we get no information about? I don't think there's just $5,000 a week is the acknowledged amount, but we're not hearing anything about what's happening down there. Is that something we can ask for?
The way things go, the DVMLs and CCO, and we've asked them to provide $750,000 a year worth of cheap community access for things that support the community, that don't pay a viable commercial rate, so that are not fully commercial activities. You are right, a fair chunk of that is the stadium market. We've never asked for a report on that, but if you would like to if you'd like to tell us what you'd like to know, I'm sure we could ask for some information.
would it be better for me to send an email of what I would like to know? Or
yes, I mean, assuming that it's within, I mean, they're an independent trust. We don't have the ability to there are constraints on what we can demand that they tell us. But if you want information about them, I'm sure they'd be happy to come along and talk to you about what they do and the service, you know, how the stadium is running.
yeah, it was at the level of how many stall holders use it. Is that number increasing? Is it not? How much does it cost them to use it, or just generally what's going on in that at that sort of level?
I'm reasonably sure that the stadium market people would be happy to give the council an update. So if you send through what you want to know, we'll send it through to them.
Thank you. Councillor Bazet.
I was going to move the well, given that we've had a presentation from Mr. Crombie, the chair of DCHL, late September, most of the councillors attended that and asked questions about that. I'm happy to, on that basis, to move the recommendation.
Second to Councillor Lord. Councillor Wilson.
I did have two questions. Apologies, Your Worship, I was on business and couldn't attend that workshop. But just the first question is on the DVML. I thank the sponsors and the people who've used it for venue hire, which is great. I presume at some stage soon there's a rollover going of the people who bought the seats at the stadium, and it's very imperative that they continue, and I hope they're being thanked and well looked after in the changeover process. Can you talk about how that's going?
So the company has they've currently got an active plan of looking at those renewals, because there is a bit of financial risk to the company that if the numbers dropped, that could have some significant downside. So they're trying to put together packages that are attractive and are meeting their needs. So.
And the only other question I had, looking through all the other reports, it's quite clear that there's changeover, and part of that will be succession planning and everything. There hasn't been any on this board since it's the boards of both of these companies since creation. Is there a strategy forward for that, or is that House or DCHL that does that now?
So currently DCHL has the governance oversight, so council's given them that role, and there'll be paper brought back to council in December for the review of all the boards and suggested changes at that time.
Right, it's been moved. Is there a seconder, or did you?
Well, seconded by Michael.
Oh, Mike, you seconded. Any further discussion? Councillor Bexley.
May I ask another question of Mr. McKenzie now, specifically on this report? If I could just refer to page 7, again, that remuneration range table for DVML. What the heading says is remuneration range, not amount paid during the period, and that's not what I understood you told me. I said, does this reflect a difference between 13 and 14? So the fact that there are no payments this year in those top two bands, is that because of timing, or is that the remuneration range that's paid to the incumbent?
So what those tables refer to is the amount of remuneration paid during that financial year. So you might, if you only worked for, say you earned $200,000 and you only worked there for 6 months of the year, you'd be only in there as $100,000.
I can confirm this is not salary ranges.
Right, well, if that's the case, then, well, one could argue the semantics. It's not clear one way or another. Perhaps a note would be appropriate.
Further discussion? I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 19, interim report on the interim audit.
All right, so obviously the auditors do they have two parts of their audit on an annual basis. They have an interim audit where they look at your systems and controls, which is what this report is about, and then they have the final audit, which has just been completed. This report has already been discussed with the Audit and Risk Subcommittee, and the Audit Director, Ian Lothian, has come along and discussed it with that committee. There's also a significant amount of follow-up done on the
the issues that are outstanding, and we're currently working through those now, and we'll be bringing back to Council a final report that says, well, identifying what issues have been resolved in the near future. And if there's any questions, I'll hopefully be able to answer them.
Councillor Vance.
The recommendation is that Council receives and notes. Sometimes we just ask to note. Could someone clarify for me what the difference is between simply noting and receiving and noting?
Well, in that regard, I note that it only says note on this occasion. This is item 19.
18.1.
19.
Pardon me. Could someone answer the question anyway?
You're asking,
I could put it
what would it mean if something else was written here?
No, I could say that instead of just noting the report, what difference would it make if we were to receive and note the report as per the previous item? So they're both the same. Thank you.
Is that true, Ms Graham? I think that's the case.
There was a former practice that we received and then noted, but the receiving is redundant. So.
On to 19 then. The recommendations on 19.3 and 19.4 only have fraud risk management in the urgent category. My experience prior to becoming a city councillor and my subsequent experience suggests strongly that contract management and procurement, the first item, and the last item, property, plant and equipment, both are in need of urgent attention. And I'm wondering what opportunity there might be for raising the recommendation from being simply necessary, contract management and procurement and property, plant and equipment. What could we do to actually get them to be more urgent?
Well, I don't think we are, it's not our job. This is an auditor's report that we're noting. It's not a council report. So, and I further note, as Mr Mackenzie has pointed out, that the Audit and Risk Committee oversees it on behalf of council, so they have received it as well. So I don't think we're in a position to tell the auditor how to do their job.
Okay. Could I also point out that the rating relates to, if you look what urgent they're saying, it major improvements required. So it's not necessarily referring to timing, because as you're aware, we're trying to complete a lot of these activities as soon as possible.
So you're suggesting that the contract management and procurement and the property, plant and equipment will actually be looked at fairly soon anyway?
They are.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll refer you, Councillor, to 19.16, which is an explanation of the auditor's priority ranking system, which shows, explains how they rank and what they mean. Councillor Thompson.
Look, just for the sake of clarification, could I just ask a question with regard to the insurance? I know the answer, but for the sake of the rest of the meeting, on page 19.7, the auditors note that they'll consider the outcome of the insurance renewal at our final audit when the negotiations are complete, but of course they have commented further to Audit and Risk with regard to that. Perhaps just might be appropriate to bring this meeting up to date with that.
Yes, so as you're aware, that our insurance renewal program was finalised this year, where we've now got cover for below ground infrastructure. We weren't able to get that in prior years. So that's a significant enhancement of our insurance policy for the council, and has reduced our risk in that aspect.
Further questions? Councillor Newton.
Just following up on Councillor Vanifus's query, and also the Mayor's comment with regards to the priority ranking system and the time frame that most of the areas that Audit New Zealand have identified as areas that we need to deal with. And you've alluded to, Mr Mackenzie, that there is a report coming back shortly to deal with those issues. We're currently 4 months into the new financial year. We've got a couple of months left effectively to essentially mop up and deal with these issues. Are we going to meet that time frame, or is it expected that you'll require more than 6 months to come back to council and inform us of any changes?
So we've already made some significant progress on addressing the issues that the auditors have identified. I can't guarantee that we're going to get all of them done in this next period, because we have got a fair bit of work on, but we are trying to address them as fast as we can.
So can I follow that up? Is it likely that the changes will be in place before the beginning of the next financial year?
The vast majority will.
Thank you.
You're moving, Councillor Staines. Is there a seconder? Councillor Noon. Discussion. I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Item 20, State Highway 1 Cycleway Working Party.
16. Second guessing them.
Oh, Mr. Avery.
So much going on. Hardly anything.
We'll just go straight to questions. Questions, councillors? So, no questions. Someone would like to move the recommendation? Councillor Lord, Councillor Wilson. Discussion. Councillor Wilson.
Your Worship, I had the privilege recently of attending the Walk and Cycle conference in Nelson, and I just wanted to raise at this point, congratulate my fellow colleagues and the councillors as we won a trophy at the awards, and it was for both State Highway 1 and the South Dunedin Cycle Network work, please. And I just want to note it was, and I'll come and present them to you very shortly, but it was a nomination put on by Robert Thompson from Spokes, just to thank the council for their work and their dedication to the process. It comes with a two-edged sword. It's acknowledgement of what we've done, but also an acknowledgement that we've got a long way to go, and in supporting the city changing to a much more friendly cycle and biking city. So, without more ado, congratulations to the Mayor and the... I think it's much better than gavel.
I could use this. Beats the gavel. Thank you. Well done. Here we go. Right. On to the...
Sorry.
Councillor.
Are we in discussion yet?
It's been moved and seconded. Yes, we are. Councillor Vance.
I'm concerned about the makeup of this committee in terms of balance. If I was to go through the membership list that's printed on 20.2, I see 2 righteous cyclists, a rail trail cyclist, the only 2 councillors that don't own cars, 2 transport agency people who have been responsible for the dreadful results of the very narrow one-way cycleway history, and an environmental sustainability coordinator from the university. To me, this choice is unbalanced to the extent that we've got a subcommittee that is guaranteed to spend the absolute maximum on what I believe to be a mistaken concept of mixing or putting cyclists up the city's main freight route. I don't believe that the makeup of the committee is going to give us anything other than a maximal spend at the expense of parking in the one-way streets. And I wonder why, for instance, when we are looking at stakeholders, we couldn't have Dr. Ian Griffin from the Otago Museum as a stakeholder, given that both one-way street systems are going to severely impact his business at Otago Museum. I'm not happy that this incremental, step-by-step way of reducing massively the parking and the one-way street systems and assuming that...
Councillor Vanders, I'd like you to withdraw that because there is no evidence here and no statement has ever been made as to the objectives of the cycling strategy that it's incrementally reducing parking, so I'd like you to withdraw that. You're misrepresenting.
You can like me to withdraw it, but
if
you would like to count the number of parks in this city...
Councillor Vanders.
Yes, Your Worship.
You're misrepresenting the intention of council and staff, and I want you to withdraw it.
I don't believe I am, and I don't believe that there's anything to withdraw. What am I specifically misrepresenting?
I just told you, you're not listening.
A reduced number of parks? That's a fact, it's not something that I need to misrepresent.
To withdraw it.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to.
Then I will ask you to leave the meeting. Further discussion. Councillor Wilson.
Only because I think I had a reference made to myself as a rail trail cyclist, which I'm very proud that I do. I'd also like to note that I think I drive on state highways more miles than any other person around this council table, and I'd just like to acknowledge that as evening the balance of my interest in cycling.
I would further add in response to Councillor Vanders' comments that if he noted 20.2, the working party was constituted on the basis of positions, not on the basis of personalities, and characterising it that way is equally offensive. Now, any further discussion? Right, Councillor Bezek.
Yeah, I would just like to make a couple of comments. Looking at the makeup of the working party that will be carrying out what I expect to be a huge task. I'm really rising to wish them all the best because it's going to be having gone through the process of trying to alter our parking configuration a few years ago, believing we had virtually everybody on board until such time as the plan was formalised, and then, goodness me, the strong support we had initially just disappeared the moment the public got word of the fact that there were going to be some changes, and there was very strong opposition to what we did, and it turned into be a very lengthy process. So I wish this committee good luck. I do take some comfort out of the fact that they are going to be consulting far and wide, and I urge that this working party takes note of that. You have got to bring everybody on board. Otherwise, you will just have so many problems later on because it's not going to be easy.
Would you like to move it?
No, I'll move
it. Second, Councillor Noon. Discussion. Councillor McTavish.
I just rise to thank Councillor Bezet for his comments. I think that all of those of us who sit around the table are aware of the magnitude of the community's needs and the community's depth of feeling around this particular project. But I would also note that the Working Party is in no way a decision-making body. The role that we have is a touchstone for technical staff, and that is clearly identified on 20.6 of the agenda. We are a touchstone for those staff in their engagement process. The actual engagement itself will be done by staff as appropriate. The project is being led by NZTA, and no part of that is a decision-making role for us around the Working Party table. So I think that is important to note in relation to the comments made by another colleague, and that any decision-making that would be done would be made around this table or the appropriate committee.
Further discussion? I'd just like to note that preparatory meetings which led to the formulation of this paper If you go down to the bottom of page 20.2, talks about other relevant groups. It was made very clear that we have to include as much consultation and as many stakeholders as we possibly can, erring on the side of being too broad, if anything, but in an effort to make sure that we don't leave anyone out. As Councillor Bazette points out, if there's anyone left out, they'll come back and bite us later, so better to bring them into the tent. All right, there being no further discussion, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Now on to item 21, options to trial pedestrianisation in the Lower Octagon and Lower Stewart Street. Dr. Hazelton. Do you want to go straight into questions?
Go straight into questions.
Councillor Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read this report with some interest because, as other councillors, I do believe that are aware, I do believe that a lot of attention is necessary, in fact overdue, in terms of our general urban design and streetscape issues. But I'm also aware that the public meetings which involved our consultant visitor also elicited a lot of good feedback from the community about the wider area, not just the Octagon precinct and the top end of Lower Stewart Street, but also George Street and so on, and possible issues in respect of shared space, traffic calming, whatever. And I'm aware, as we all are, of the wider conversations that are happening about George Street, other infrastructural work and so on. So I really wanted to ask Dr. Hazelton what is the link between the discussions that have led to this report from the annual plan and your discussions with his discussions with the local retailers in that area, and the other conversations that are, and suggestions that have come from Cobus Ments, and how can that all best be progressed so that either incrementally or at such time as funds do become available, or there's a consensus about what might be the best way to proceed, where we can make progress rather than going around in circles.
Currently we are working on an updated version of the Central City Plan, which would entirely deal with these types of issues and hopefully come up with a formalised process and then a design for places like the Octagon to work to. What we're going to have is the strategic overview, hopefully to council. I think that is due by the 9th or something for the councillors' pack at Christmas time. And then we would be going forward from there to get the design work done. All of this should fit, and this is partly why the recommendation is as it is to just hold this at the moment, is because we do want to do this in a holistic fashion, that it is an approach to the entire central city, including George Street and the Octagon, rather than trying something piecemeal at the moment that might not fit with the bigger picture.
Further questions? Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. Had the informal feedback you received from retailers and businesses in the Octagon been more enthusiastic? Would your recommendation in this report have been the same?
I think it would have been, because I think if we had had two answers to the question maybe. Yes, I think it would have been, because we want to look at it, as I said, in that holistic fashion. Had it have come through in a way that was maybe community instigated from the retailers in the area, I don't know that necessarily would have changed our picture, because we are still going to be in a situation where we would be looking at that part of the Octagon ad hoc rather than looking at the entire Octagon. There's a range of issues that we need to deal with in that area, including the formal layout of the area in future. We've done some work this year around things like the cruise ships and how they're laid out. For us, it's just a concern that if we do look at it in isolation, that we run the risk of running a trial that might shut down some options in the future as well. That if we trialled pedestrianisation now and we didn't go through a really robust process, it wasn't completely thought through, that it might actually ruin opportunities for that in future. So, but yes, we've taken on board that feedback pretty strongly. I don't personally think we would have come up with a different option had they have been more pro.
And my second question was just about the 5-year time horizon that's mentioned in there, and where that came from, whether that reflects, as is implied, private concerns about the length of commercial leases, or whether or not that's more to do with capital expenditure budgets available to us to do that work, or is it both?
It was both, but probably more the around the lease times that people have, because I understand that we could, you know, if it was deemed to be the highest priority, other things could be shuffled if council decided that that was the biggest priority for CapEx when it came back on board. It was in terms of giving people a lengthy time frame to which to adjust their business, and within that 5-year time most people would have some type of lease negotiation again to decide whether they wanted to stay in that area or potentially relocate to that area if they're not there already.
Just in respect of the other element, one of the elements in the report about events or performance or other such like attractors, what, if any, capacity do we have currently in existing budgets to stage or facilitate such activities in the Octagon or elsewhere?
We're not so much in terms of where we were thinking with events and things, but in terms of movable furniture, relocatable stuff, that type of thing. We do have a small amount of money in the street trees and furniture budget that could be dedicated to that. I'm talking tens of thousands rather than hundreds of thousands.
Thank you. Thank you for your 5 options. Plenty of scope for a decision, I think. But just in option 3, just you discuss measures for lowering vehicle speeds and also volumes, and I'm okay with the speed side in terms of the measures you're suggesting. I think that they would move slower with those measures. But in terms of the volumes, I just wondered if there was anything more that you would like to add in terms of measures, or is it just simply a perception that under option 3 that the traffic would be going slower and people would be put off going there?
Yeah, it is that latter position that should you slow traffic through that area and make it more difficult to go through, it will discourage some people from using that as a commuter route, for example, and they'd use other routes instead. You know, so they might instead circle around the outside of Moray Place rather than going through. Obviously, that introduces other elements of risk as well, given that Moray Place we have had, you know, some serious injuries and fatalities in that area as well. So, you know, displacing traffic to another area is not always, you know, doesn't always have the desired outcome as well. But it'll be predominantly around reducing the attractiveness as a through route.
I'm interested in what the reaction of retailers in the area was. Sorry, I'll rephrase this. What was their reaction to? In other words, what was the concept that you put to them that they were reacting to? How was it defined? What was their understanding as to what a trial might mean?
At this stage, we didn't put a concept to them. That was what would be the next stage, is if council chose to put out these 5 options for consultation, that would be what they'd be commenting on. At the moment, I guess most have commented on what they perceived to be a full closure for a set period of time, as was reported in the ODT following the annual plan submissions.
So where I've got some difficulties and is around how people react to something is very dependent on what it is they think they're reacting to. And it's not clear to me that there's any common or shared understanding about what people are reacting to. So my question is, how would you envisage that we would ever know what the impact of any kind of pedestrianisation measure might be in the future, whether good or bad, if the recommendation is as your recommendation is now.
That's absolutely a risk that we won't know exactly what the outcome would be. The other option that I guess is open to council at this stage is to still go out and consult on these 5 options and decide from there whether there is grounds to run the trial.
So if I could ask one further question. If the intention was to go out and consult on these options, would it not be more appropriate to actually define what a trial closure would be, what would be envisaged, so that a consultation could be on something known as opposed to hypothesised? And if that was the case, is there a possibility that rather than rushing something, that there may be merit in postponing any consultation till sometime next year, with the following summer in mind, and having a consultation around an action known alternative? And I guess my reason for that is that a concern I expressed right at the beginning was that if we do something badly, then that would be tragic. But I imagine that there might be a different view to something that was, say, a defined 2-month trial and with pictures of what was involved, versus something that people don't know whether it's going to go on for 6 months or 12 months or what. Right.
Yep. Yes, I agree. I think what we've been stuck in is we've been trying to get, because of the timeframes that council said that they wanted to look at, to try and undertake a trial this year. We had to strike a balance between what we could feasibly get through and effectively the 3 months since the annual plan. I think you're right that it would be, your option is right to go out to the community and with fully designed options, what they're going to look like, and that option is still on the table for council to consider. I think our one concern around that is that this is an issue that comes up every couple of years, and if we're not going to be in a position to implement it properly with funding, then it could be something that we're lining people up to again be disappointed like they were a couple of years ago when a different bunch of people came forward with the option to trial. So I think if it's, yes, we could go out to trial, but we need to be sure that we actually have the resources to fully implement that trial properly.
Thank you.
Councillor McTash.
Thank you, Glenn. My question is effectively in relation to that issue. I take it that your opposition to this is more around the timing and the funding of a trial rather than the concept of trials per se.
Absolutely.
So if council were to move to investigate a budget which could be tagged to a possible future trial and put that in the long-term plan, and defer a decision about the nature and location of any possible trial until the central city planning process has gone forward somewhat, would that be something which you could support?
It would be. I think for councillors that probably know me quite well, I don't like to do things that aren't done properly, and I would like to ensure that when we run the trial, it gives the trial the best possible opportunity to demonstrate what the actual effects are going to be, rather than to run a trial that we could potentially have spurious results from, or have preconceptions about what it was going to be, or in worst case scenario, people sabotaging the trial, or because they feel that, we haven't been consulted enough on this and this was just pushed through. So it's very much about having the right trial. But yes, I'm not opposed to a trial per se.
I guess just a couple of slightly more detailed questions. In relation relation to the comments that you make somewhere in here about insufficient budget for monitoring and I guess research around a possible trial, has there been any discussion about that with our colleagues at the university in terms of the support that they may be able to provide and the mutual benefit that that might offer their students in terms of working on a meaningful project?
No, there haven't been yet. That is certainly something that could be looked at. Again, it would not have been something probably that would have worked for this summer, but it's certainly, if we lengthen it out, is something that could be looked at. So we've got that time to get it into the university's curricula.
And I guess a final question, and that's, you note in your introduction the issues around, I guess timing in summer and in terms of this 5-year time frame that we're talking for Central City work, if it turns out to be that long, would you think that we might be in a position in terms of that Central City planning work and discussions with stakeholders around that to have some idea, say by the middle of next year or in time for a late summer, autumn trial of some location at some point this time next year? Would we be in a position this time next year as a result of that Central City planning work to make a call on a possible trial site for the following summer, autumn?
I think it will still be tight, but I think it is more possible for next year. I think we might not have a fully completed idea of where we're going with the Central City plan, but I think we'll certainly be further down the track in terms of where it could sit within that plan in terms of a trial, but also just in terms of, most importantly for me, is that groundwork with people in the area, with the university, with others, to ensure that we're making the best possible go of the trial.
Well, your worship, given the nature of those questions, I would signal that I'd like to move something different from what's on the order paper, but I think Councillor Hawkins is probably going to move it, so yeah.
Well, you're the next question. Councillor Hawkins.
Indeed, Your Worship, and I mean, I rise to foreshadow that I do have 3 motions different to those that are on the order paper that Ham has, particularly pertinent in light of that conversation.
You haven't got another question? I've got 2 more questions to go and then we'll come back to that. Councillor Kell.
Can't quite read that, so I can't probably be talking to that, but the question I have is that it seemed to me that it had come as a trial closing the Octagon off to traffic, which I understand from earlier in the year, and that your response has essentially been using the word holistic, which is, of course, a wonderful word, that we should look at the whole thing and how we're going to use the Octagon before we deal with this as a side issue. Is that... yeah.
I was worried that was mine.
Yeah. Sorry. Is what you're saying that you see this as that it fits more easily into a second step of a 2-step process? First, look at the whole plan, and second, then trial that? Is that sort of what I'm hearing? Because you seem to be being sort of, to some extent, backed into a corner to say, would the trial be now or later, as opposed to, is this a 2-step process that we should look at the whole thing first and then the trial as a second thing is?
I don't think there's actually an easy answer to that one, because of probably what Councillor Thompson raised as well, is that while it might be ideal to leave that to a second stage, in some respects you're never going to quite know whether a trial works or not, and you could go down the route of spending a lot of money in terms of infrastructure on a shared space, for example, only to find that that doesn't work either. So I can kind of see the merit in still undertaking a trial prior to final decisions around what the form of the Octagon will be, but it just needs a longer time frame to lead into that trial. the last thing I want to do is commit us to major infrastructure works for either pedestrianisation or shared space when it might not work, or it might not be as far as you would have wanted to go. So in an ideal world, yes, it would be wait to a second point, but I think that runs quite a large risk of not seeing what the real ramifications of something are. So I think a trial is still a valuable step.
Councillor Z.
Dr. Hazelton, given this is a question with regards to public consultation, and some of the retailers in that area have said to me that they feel that the public is given far more weight with regards to the request to have a trial than what they themselves have. And given that a 2-month potential closure or a trial is a long time, it could indeed be the finish of some business in that area, and I've been told that. Whether it's true or not is another issue. But they feel that, and this is a question, they feel that there is too much weight given to public requests for a trial rather than taking notice of the business. So how much weight is given to those who are going to be directly affected by any potential trial versus those who think that the idea is really good and has a long-term potential advantages for the city?
Well, I guess in some respects that's a question for council, not for staff, given that we weren't the ones that put the resolution through for proposing a trial. We're responding to a request from council to have this report. This wasn't on staff's agenda until the annual plan, but I think as a second point it would come back to council through any consultation, at which point council would make the decisions around what weight they gave to either side if it came down to 2 sides following the consultation. So I don't think staff would be presupposing a certain weight to either side.
Thank you. If I could just ask a question again of Dr. Hazelton, that given that we have managed to put up with, no more thank goodness, but put up with for some time considerable disruption to the central carriageway of the Octagon by way of orange cones and traffic management issues for tour buses, would it not be possible in respect of trialling, given the suggestions that Cobus Mentz talked about that I hadn't seen previously in the last set of consultations he was involved with around the flow in the Octagon, to trial changes to the flow in the 2 quadrants at very low cost? And is it not also fair to say that properly designed, allowing access to the Athenaeum, the Florist, 1 or 2 other retail areas, the second-hand shop and so on, there could be considerable advantage for a lot of the retail operators in the area, as well as those who would welcome and do welcome now changes for their own private commercial reasons?
On the first one, yes, I think what we had been mindful of during putting together the options was trying to avoid lots of orange cones back in the Octagon. That was certainly foremost in our mind, given we knew council's feelings on how the cruise ships had looked for the last few years. I think in terms of the second point, there was an email I sent around, I think I only sent around yesterday, sorry, that was a response from Cobus after he had read this report, so it has some detail in there, and he also outlines a couple of areas where he thinks sort of I feel like a compromise position where there are opportunities to improve things for the existing retailers in there over and above what they have at the moment. And that would be a case of just needing to work through those and talking with those retailers about what impact, positive or negative, they think those things could have on their businesses. Again, I think it's just a question of timing, that yes, that could be done.
Okay, it's questions. Now, it's been moved, what's on the wall, on the screen, has been moved by Councillor Hall, which is seconded by Councillor McTavish. Would you like to speak to this, Councillor Hall?
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Given the timeline that we're currently operating on, I can see that it's fairly difficult from this point to achieve any real meaningful public consultation on this in time for the summer tourist season 2014-15. But if we make a commitment today, and this is what I hope these motions are doing, to set a date for the debate to continue, I'm more comfortable with that than I am with the idea of deferring it indefinitely. We're told from the report that there's been concern from tenants and businesses in the Octagon, and that's understandable. We also have informal online polls and feedback that we've had in public workshops and anecdotally from people that suggest that there is a very strong interest from the public in making our city centre more people-friendly, both in terms of safety and amenity. Having a city centre where people want to spend time and where they want to be. And I'm no marketing professor, but I would suggest that a place where people want to spend time is a pretty good place to set up a business and go into business. We know that times are tough for retailers. They face a number of challenges, both locally in terms of inflexible commercial lease arrangements, and globally in terms of online retail and the like. We're fast coming into a situation where 4 lease signs are a great growth industry. This is not a reason to maintain the status quo. In fact, I believe the total opposite. This is a sign for us, or a catalyst for us to start thinking about doing things differently. I understand that retailers and landlords are anxious about what any changes in this area may mean for their business and for their livelihoods, and I understand that. But I'm anxious too, and I think a lot of people in the community are anxious about the future of our downtown as the social and commercial centre of Dunedin. These competing anxieties, which weight they're given, and the likes, can only really be dealt with, I think, through a formal consultation process that hopefully will continue should these motions be passed. Helping supporting local business and attracting business and economic development, this is something our community has told us is very important to them, and this is something that we have taken as a priority both strategically and financially as a council. We're often told that we don't do enough to help business, but in my view, this is exactly what this is trying to do in terms of building, and as loathed as I am to refer to a community as a brand or a product, we're fortunate enough to have inherited fantastic built heritage and natural heritage, and we let either of those deteriorate at our own peril. We're competing in a very competitive global marketplace when it comes to attracting people to live here, to work here, to study here, to visit here. We're never going to be a global super city. We are a lifestyle choice, and the kinds of things that attract people to a city like Dunedin are a flourishing downtown that people want to spend time in, and as well as our fine natural assets that are on our back door. As I said last time we debated this, by the very nature of the Octagon, this is always going to be a contentious issue, a passionate debate covering a fairly wide range of views, and I think, as I've said, the best way for us to do that is through a formal consultation process, and I think that this gives us a pragmatic way forward in the interim, allows us a full scope of initiatives to encourage greater public use of our downtown over this summer, while we work on more permanent solutions, both strategically and financially, through the long-term plan process. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Look, I was prepared to support the recommendations as they were in the paper, but I'm much more prepared to support these proposed alternatives, and so I would speak in support of these. I think it's really important that we work out clearly what it is that we're wanting to achieve through pedestrianisation. And the big worry that I've had about this is not the concept per se, but whether we've got a clear understanding about what we want to come out of it. And for me, there's a number of things. We can simply close off the area and run a trial, and that will add nothing to our understanding. What it will tell us is that people can cross the road slightly more safely. It will give no addition. That's not a reason why people come to an area, by the way. Most of them feel they can cross the road reasonably adequately without having it blocked off. So it doesn't add anything to the area. It doesn't tell us how people's use of the area might change, and it doesn't. So getting a trial right to me becomes really important. If I'm a retailer, as I am, I know that what I want from a business perspective is to give people more reasons to come to a place. And retailers tend to coalesce around each other for exactly that reason. They want to give people a collective reason to be there. Now, that can't be the only reason, and I think that Councillor Hawkins is right to talk about the city's brand and its attractiveness and all of those things. But I think we could, if we get this right, we can not only enhance the city's brand, we can not only enhance the community use of the area and enhance the heart, but we can also actually add benefit to most businesses, won't always be all, but most businesses that are in that area. And so getting it right for me is critical. And any trial simply involves closing it off and plonking a few seats down in a couple of planter boxes, to me is not a trial at all. It's a waste of time. So having an overall concept that we're wanting to actually check out and using a trial to get a better understanding of that takes time, and that needs to be thought through in a more holistic sense. So I think this is a way of doing that. It gives staff time to do that. It also means that when a trial is taking place, it can be presented to those in the area as a known thing. For how long, exactly what's involved, they can have input potentially to what's involved, and they know if it all goes pear-shaped, there's an end to it. But, you know, businesses only find out sometimes whether things are in their benefit by taking risks and trialling things as well. And if we never do anything different when we're struggling in a tough environment, we will all ultimately go down the plug hole. You just have to take risks and do things differently. But let's make it a known risk and give ourselves time to do it right.
Thank you, Bishop. Yeah, look, I support this. These three motions. I do so, and I won't cover what has previously been said that I agree with, and I agree with a lot of what's been said. But my key reasons for it are that I think there was a real risk with the original recommendations that we threw the baby out with the bathwater, and the baby here, I think the idea of trialling things is a good idea. It's I went back to a TED talk by Jeanette Sadiq Khan, who's DOT over in New York, and clearly completely different scale. But what she said, I think, is quite relevant, and so I wrote down a quote from that TED talk last night. She says, "The temporary materials are an important part of the process because we could show how it worked. I work for a data-driven mayor. If it works better for traffic, better for mobility, better for safety, better for business, we would keep it. And if it didn't work, no harm, we could just put it back the way it was because these were temporary materials." And that was a very big part of the buy-in. Much less anxiety when you think something can be just put back. And I think that in a city where we have not a whole lot of money to spend, where we want to invest and do it right when we do it, when we have a limited number of public spaces and we want to do those really well, we want to be at the cutting edge of best practice with those spaces, we want to be known for the boutique city that we can be and that we are, I think it is critical that we employ trials to make sure that we are doing all of those things and doing them damn well. So I feel passionately, in case people haven't noticed, about the concept of trials. What I'm not so committed to is that this, and I wasn't involved in the initial decision, I'm not, as other councillors have raised, Councillor Staines, Councillor Thompson, have said in the past, I'm not sure whether this is the right space for that. And I think our planner has flagged that again in his report today. He has said, you know, there are a number of potential treatments for our central city going forward. We're exploring those with stakeholders at the moment. We're not quite sure what the ultimate mix will be and which spaces will end up being the spaces that we might wish to have a treatment like this on. And we can't it would be unfortunate to predetermine the outcome of that process when we're partway through it, and I agree with that too. So what I think that these three motions do is is three different things. They embed in the Central City Plan process the possibility of trials. So the Central City Plan process and they place emphasis on that process as a way for community discussions and things to be tested. And I think that that's a very good thing, because I think some of the angst that has come around this has been a concern about lack of process or lack of engagement opportunity and lack of an opportunity to tease out those things together. So I think it does that. It places emphasis on the Central City Plan process, and it places emphasis on the fact that if we do decide to do a trial, we will be doing it in a place where it has been considered by all stakeholders that this might be most appropriate. So at the outcome of that Central City planning process. I think one of the biggest challenges for Dunedin is ensuring that we are not perceived as a place where we are unwilling to consider or contemplate change just because it's change. I think that would be a death knell for the city if we get to a position where we are unwilling to contemplate change just because it's change. We need to be making decisions about that in a really data-driven way, and this trialling possibility offers us the opportunity to do that. And I think finally it provides staff with the time to do the work that they want to do around this, and I think we need to be supporting them in that. So I commend these three motions to Council.
Councillor Kelvin.
I think it's a pity we didn't get to hear from the person who didn't arrive earlier for the public forum on account of some confusion with the staff about where they were going. But one of the things that she said was that there were, and I'm sure she'll circulate people and send things in, the concerns for her are partly around the likes of and people saying that they had a 30% drop in their business if there wasn't a park outside, those sorts of things. I'm presuming that these three resolutions are written in a way such as that we are able to expect from the staff trials of treatments that include shared use of the streets and other things such as that Cobus Mentz was talking to us about. And I'm presuming that they are actually wide enough too to allow us to consider the likes of trialling 2-hour free parking in the street around the Octagon to see whether that makes a difference to how people feel. I don't think they limit those sorts of things, and I would like to hope that the staff could come back to us with the effects of financial requirements for some of the other sorts of things that could happen that might make a difference to businesses in the area, because I do not share Councillor Hawkins' conviction or enthusiasm for the idea that we are here to support businesses as if we know better than the businesses. I do think the businesses have everything they own and hold dear on the line, and they are likely to know better than us what their requirements are. So my confidence in these resolutions are on the basis that they are wide enough to allow us to think more holistically, and insofar as we are looking at any trials that we trial, a variety of ways we could use the Octagon and the costs as far as we know it. Hopefully, when it says financial requirements, it also allows us to be thinking about the financial effects on not only the council, but the people who pay our rates, which is the rest of the people who might have financial effects here.
Councillor Law.
Look, I was just wondering if Aaron would mind telling me what he thinks number one means. I just was wondering what the initiatives to encourage greater public use were, if that is not actually roping the lower Octagon off. I just wondered what he might have meant.
That may be a question that was per the recommendation on the order paper, so it's as wide and it's as enabling as staff want it to be.
Paint a game of Twister on the road though, can you? I just wonder what that might have meant.
What we had looked at is when we did a bit of a brainstorming session around why the lower part of the octagon wasn't used as much as maybe the top part of the octagon was. We noted that there's kind of different conditions, and if you're sitting in the lower octagon, because of the way the seats are laid out, on the top you can sit just around quite casually on the grass, and you can sit there by yourself and have an ice cream and not feel a little bit like standing out, whereas down the bottom it's very barren, and you do stand out if you're sitting down there by yourself. And as someone that doesn't like standing out by myself in the octagon, we thought some things like movable seating. We'd even looked at temporary play equipment for children to try and encourage people, and because we can't do any permanent structures down there, obviously. So it was some things like that to try and maybe allow people to claim back that space themselves a little bit as well. It could be as easy as rolling out some ready lawn and allowing people, movable lawn, that type of thing that people can, feel free to relax around. There'll be low cost measures, and we may also look at who's around in terms of artists and that to do some temporary installations.
I can support these. It's very much the same as, very close to the option 2 that I did favour. One of the things that business don't like is uncertainty. And if this was just to go out as it is, there would be some business saying, hey, what is going on here? I presume that the Central City Plan, there'll be any amount of opportunities for business to make submissions during that process, so I'm relatively happy about that. The other thing was the temporary trials treatment. Is that related? Do you mean that, Councillor Hawkins, to be specific to the octagon, or are you looking at temporary trials treatment right across the city within the recommendations that may come through the Central City Plan? Because I think that should be spelled out as well. There might be temporary closures elsewhere, or temporary trials. Okay? Am I being pedantic, or are you?
But Councillor McTavish has told you mean.
So
it refers.
If you mean it should be just temporary trial treatments for the octagon, then it should say so.
No, it refers to the Central City Plan.
That's fine. I'm happy with that. And the other thing was, would you be willing to include in your in the first part of it the lower octagon, the lower Stewart Street area as well, or do you intend to? Was that meant to be included as part of your resolution? Because at the moment, all it says is the lower octagon.
Aware of that.
Lower Stewart Street as well?
No, in the first instance, referring to the lower octagon, because I can't see there being a lot that you can do in the first block of Lower Stewart Street, while it is a...
Sorry, it was, the lower part of...
Yeah.
The upper part of Lower Stewart Street,
The first block, as per the original resolution, yeah. But no, this specifically says the lower octagon.
Okay, well, so the resolution is literally as it is. That's all I want to know. Thank you very much.
Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support these recommendations mainly because the recommendations as from the staff didn't carry this idea far enough for me, and I'm happy now that this sets a pathway for us all, for all citizens, and especially those who work and own buildings in the central city. It gives us a pathway because it's linking us into that central city upgrade proposal that is going to carry our site forward. We've had generations of discussion over how to use this octagon space, and this is another iteration of that debate that's gone on for as long as the city's been here. I support this. I think we do need to signal, and even in that first motion, was signal that something is changing in the central city. And even if it is pop-up performance or some extra furniture or something to warm up that lower octagon, I think that's what we need. It is a cold, hard place, actually, when there's nothing going on there and there's no one in it. And so I can imagine there'll be some nice ideas happening over the summer. So I support this recommendation.
Councillor Stones.
I can support these resolutions. I had considerable concern at the original resolutions around Lower Stewart Street, and that stemmed from the fact that I was far from convinced that Lower Stewart Street is actually the right place to look at giving our retail district a lift. I firmly believe that we have to look completely differently at our CBD, because retailing, the face of retailing, is changing significantly. We are seeing more and more e-retailing, and that changes the role of the retailers who are populating our central shopping area. No longer are they places where people need to go to shop. They are places where people might go and shop. So I think some of the initiatives that we will look at in the Central City Plan may well enable us, in conjunction with the building owners and the retailers who operate their businesses from those buildings, to take part in building a whole new vision for that central city area that makes it very attractive to people. Retailers need people. If we can make that area really, really attractive, then people will go there. If people go there, they are tempted to shop, and that will give the retailers the foot traffic they need to do the deal. I think the key here is, and it was alluded to in the report, and in fact stands out in these resolutions, is that you can't do a trial unless you do it in a realistic way to get a realistic outcome. So if you just close the street off and put a couple of pot plants there, that won't necessarily make it the place where people want to go, and the retailers may well then suffer. So I think we do need to think this through. We do have to commit some budget if we're going to do a trial, but I think the trial, to me, is definitely further down the track. The first thing we need to do is to get real, meaningful engagement with the retailers and the building owners in a process which helps them think outside the square and dream about what they might see as the ideal place for their business to operate from. So I support these resolutions, assuming that this does not drift down into closing Lower Stewart Street. The Octagon is an area that I think could be improved.
I support the motion. I don't want to talk to that directly. I want to note that one of the learnings in Wellington, one of the reasons why I support a delay in this is actually, sorry, not in Wellington. In Nelson, I learned of an experiment done or some data collection done in Wellington, where again retailers keep on saying that the car parks outside their place were really important for their business. There's a really good opportunity to copying some of the work that they've done up there, which showed that very little retail was actually done from the car parks outside businesses. And in fact, they spent the least, those that did use those in those areas. The people who spent the most were those walking, cycling and off-street car parking in an area, and that was in Tory Street. Now, whether that is information that can be extrapolated here to this area or into parts of Dunedin, I don't know, but there's some really good work that, and I can't remember whose work it was, but I think we need to get the data right and also inform better the retailers there of the perceptions and the reality of some of the myths that go around about business and car parking.
Councillor White.
Yeah, I thought long and hard on this one about whether I would support it, because I actually really liked what was recommended. When Dr. Hazelden says do the trial properly and do the trial right, that to me sums up very much what I'd like to support. The Lower Octagon is primarily a food and beverage area, and with destinations such as the Regent Theatre. When we look at what this could turn the Octagon into as we go into the LAP and its effects on what the Octagon will be, how we're going to come out of that process, how the cycleways will affect the Octagon, and the potential bus hub and public transport through the Octagon. The part that we were told in previous committee meeting was that one intersection closure has a 3-block radius effect. So I'm really concerned about really getting too carried away with this. But as it has to come back through the during the development of the Central City Plan, I will support it on that basis, because that will give us plenty of time to further see what the results will be.
Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really pleased with these recommendations. I think they provide us with a good pathway forward, and I think Dunedin residents should be pleased at the quality of the consideration that is being shared around the table. I was quite surprised at the Covis public meetings, one for retailers, one for the general public, at the level of support there was for some sort of change, initiative, new activity. And as a result of that, I did a bit of sitting in the car, drinking coffee, wandering down the street. I parked in George Street, by the way. It's not all that hard to find a park in George Street at the moment, and watched what was happening with the traffic. And I hadn't really appreciated just how unfriendly a lot of our physical main shopping street environment is. Traffic speeds are undoubtedly too high. And we know the transportation people are often telling us, and the stats are certainly telling us, we have actually quite an unsafe area in parts of our central city. And we're doing a lot of work about that around key squeeze points at the moment. So I think this is timely. I think it's timely that we have take careful consideration of what we might do, and I think it's appropriate that we focus on the wider central business area, central activity area, rather than just the Octagon. The key thing about this, though, I think has been already alerted to people today, and that's about what is proposed, because it's important that we are as inclusive and as specific as possible, because there has been an extraordinary amount of myth and fancy about what was going to happen in the Octagon when already. We've heard it. I've heard it when I've been walking around from people who have fixed retail that's not entertainment retail. And clearly places like the Athenaeum and the Regent, Ticketek and so on, or whatever it's called, if it's the other company, they have to be accessed often by other than people walking. And I do have some experience, as do one or two other people around this table, with what happened last time. And it was certainly true that the world was going to end when the paving work and streetscape and urban design work was done in George Street. It didn't take long, though, with a more enhanced physical environment for retailers to realise that people like being there. And I think it's important that we don't talk about, we're really careful about the language here. Pedestrianisation frightens people. They immediately see closure, no vehicles and the rest of it. I don't know about most pedestrians in George Street, but when I'm a pedestrian in George Street, I've parked somewhere and got to where I'm doing my pedestrianing in George Street. So we are all both vehicle drivers, almost all of us, and pedestrians. And when I go to town, I want to do what the cruise ship people do. I want to have a safe, more friendly, more enjoyable, more attractive urban environment, which will encourage, as retailers have said historically, Councillor Wilson is quite correct, will encourage greater retail, and so I think the user-friendly for all users focus is where we should be placing our language. I think it's really important that as whatever develops, that our communication strategy is sound and that people know what we're talking about, rather than whatever the gossip is for this week. And we're doing this in a timely way because we're also talking about other changes in respect of bus routes, and of course the potential for increased parking as a result of rerouting of some of the George Street bus traffic is immense and would be welcomed, provided vehicles vehicles are moving at a more reasonable and appropriate pace by those who are operating retail businesses there. I think what's been said about the challenges to retail are absolutely valid, and that makes it more important that we do grasp the nettle, if you like, and make sure that we do what we need to do to make the inner city urban environment absolutely attractive as we possibly can for all the users.
Honourable Speakers, and before I offer the mover the right of reply, I would like to express my position on this. I support this. I think it's an improvement on the recommendation. And I think the first thing I want to acknowledge is how incredibly important the area we're talking about is. It's incredibly important to the retailers, and it's incredibly important to their clients, and they have a symbiotic relationship. So there's a lot of people involved in how this works. And it's very important, I note, to tourists and visitors who comment on the uniqueness of our central city. But given what we've heard from various people around the table about the changes that are impacting on retail, I don't think that doing nothing is an option. If we leave it the way it is, it's going to keep deteriorating, there's going to be more police signs, and we're not going to get anywhere. So clearly we have to do something. Over the last few months since the annual plan, I've had quite a number of emails from mostly businesses expressing in some cases concern about what might be proposed, and in some cases support for what might be proposed. What it showed to me was there was, on the one hand, quite a lot of misconception about what might be proposed, and the other thing it pointed up was that there was quite a difference of interests, and that's, in very simplistic terms, the bar owners have different interests from other kinds of retailers, and that's perfectly legitimate. And some retailers and some organisations in the area have definite needs for parking, like age concern, whereas others don't. It's not quite so clear. The conclusion this leads me to is that there needs to be a lot more dialogue, a lot more discussion around finding some common understanding of what the imperatives are that are driving the needs of the area, whether it's parking or whether it's e-commerce, online marketing, retailing, all that kind of thing. I think there needs to be, in addition to the normal consultation, I just think we need to be trying to achieve some kind of common understanding, because without that, there are still going to be perceived differences of interest, and they'll clash. And so I'm going to suggest that, in addition, suggest this to the mover and seconder, and if they are not happy to accept it as a fourth part of the resolution, then I'll do it separately. But a new number 2, that dialogue be continued with all central city stakeholders to seek common understanding of the drivers affecting all of their respective interests. And that's different from consultation, but it is a continued discussion in an effort to achieve some common understanding. And do you want me to read that?
Yeah, can you read that again?
Yeah, that dialogue be continued with all central city stakeholders to seek a common understanding of the drivers affecting all of their respective interests.
I'm happy with that. Are you intending that to be as part of Central City Plan work, i.e. focused on the Central City?
Yes, with all Central City stakeholders.
Right.
It's confined to the Central City.
Yep, okay, that's fine.
So with the lead of the mover and seconder.
Yeah, I just have a question as to, I'm okay with that, so long as the public at large, given the contentious and sensitive nature of some of the sites that we're talking about, are considered as one of the stakeholders.
That's why I've emphasised all.
Okay, that's fine.
Can I suggest that while that's being typed up, do you want to wait till it's typed up before you exercise your right of reply, or do you want to go for it?
But don't really, I mean, don't really have much.
Well, just excuse me. If Councillor Hawkins is going to speak, and then we won't get the chance to vote on your particular resolution unless they agree to.
They have agreed.
They have agreed. Okay. Well, that being the case, I'd like to make a comment about what you've said, because I think, not wishing to be pedantic.
I don't think that's unreasonable. And just to put it in context, I tossed up whether to bring this to the fore at the beginning of the discussion or after. But
I just think we could. The comment I make is, I think we're creating a rod for our own back. And if you're going to be in consultation with all stakeholders, that is a huge undertaking in a relatively short time, and I just don't think it's possible. I'd like to see perhaps the council of the staff and see what they say about that. But I don't think that's a practical additional resolution, because it entails a huge amount of consultation. Whereas if we leave it as the way it stands at the moment during the development of the Central City Plan, that is where there will be extensive consultation undertaken. And what you're advocating is that this consultation that you're saying now will take place, will precede that, and in my view, I think that's impractical.
Right, well, that's fine. I didn't see it as consultation, I saw it as dialogue, and that's the way I've termed it. But I'm happy to take the resolutions parts separately in any case. So it is now up on the board. Do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I don't have much to add to this, and I'd like to reiterate the thanks that others have given to the calibre of the debate that we've had around this issue today. It's been very productive, and thank you to the staff for their work that they've put into this already. Speaking of, Councillor Bizet's back rods, I feel almost obliged to apologise somewhat for creating one through the initial motion during the annual plan process, which specifically refers to pedestrianisation and specifically to the Lower Octagon and to the first block of Lower Stewart Street. I think this is a far more open process and allows us access to a broader spectrum of options across a wider geographic area, and I think will lead to, hopefully, should this dialogue and consultation go according to plan, a far more inclusive discussion and a far more productive outcome. So thank you.
Now, as I said, in response to Councillor Bizet, I'm happy to put these separately. So you're at liberty then to.
Well, reading it now, I'd support it, and I'd say good luck. It happens.
Thank you.
You're in charge.
Well, if everyone's comfortable, I'll put the lot together. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right. Item 22, submission of the Southern District Health Board Draft Strategic Health Services Plan. Is there anything you want to kick off with?
Just a couple of quick observations, really. I think the submission speaks for itself. Just two things to highlight. One is that there are some clear synergies between the goals and priorities of the District Health Board and the Council's own strategic goals and priorities. And also just to highlight the intention to upgrade the hospital, Dunedin Hospital, and develop a high-level master plan. Just to note that that's working together on that strategic planning is what's already been underway through the Tertiary Sector Steering Group and Tertiary Precinct Planning Group.
Questions, councillors? So it's been moved, council. Is this a?
Well, I'll ask a question if I have to, but I would like to move an amendment to what's on the order paper.
Right. Well, there's someone been. Councillor Wilson's prepared to move it. Shall we see if the amendment is acceptable to Councillor Wilson and any potential seconder, and then we don't have to go through the formal process of amending.
I'll just withdraw because she's I'm happy to withdraw and let Ginty do it.
Right, so you're going to move a new motion that includes an amendment?
So I'm more than happy with most of the submission. And I'm sorry, Nicola, I didn't have time to flag this with you earlier. I read the SDHB's plan at about midnight last night. So so my whilst Pam is typing it up, because it's reasonably lengthy, I will ask one question which highlights my concern, and then once it's up, I would like to explain.
And I note that you need a second.
Yes, so that's why I'll ask a question first. So my question is just in relation to strategic priority 2, which is relating to specialist services. And my question is, and you may or may not know this, Nicola, but when the SDHB historically has signalled its intent to remove specialist services from Dunedin or move them to another location, has there been early engagement with the council about that, or has that been something that we have found out through the media when it has been announced?
I'm not really qualified to comment on that, so I'm not aware of whether we've had early heads up about those kind of intentions in the past.
Councillor Wilson, did you have
I was wondering if the CEO could inform us whether, under the new relationship they've got with CEOs, whether the CEO could inform us under the new relationship that you've got with CEOs talking to each other, whether if there were any withdrawal of services likely to happen, that it would be heads up to council prior to it becoming front page news on the ODT.
I would expect that to be the case. It's certainly been, there's been quite good ongoing and productive dialogue between us as Chief Executive.
Well, given I'm not sure how far Pam is off, but I will explain the intent of my amendment, and that is to adopt the submission with an amendment to the section relating to strategic priority 2 that notes the importance of the SDHB's operations to our economic development strategy, particularly those pertaining to specialist services, that it notes the community's demonstrated historic willingness to contribute to the retention of those services in Dunedin, and thirdly requests early engagement from the SDHB around potential changes to the location of specialist service delivery, so that we can coordinate an appropriate positive community response should that be something that the community wishes to do. So that is the import of the motion. I just envisage another short clause there that speaks to those 3 things, and that's what I would like to move, if there is a second. Yeah.
That's fine. Is there a second? Councillor Hawkins. So can I just paraphrase what you've said, that basically you're saying if things are likely to be changed, we want some warning so we can help?
Correct. Yeah. So the motion is out there. Thank you, Pam, for your speed typing. The reason for this, I think, is in this submission as it currently stands, it speaks to the importance of the SDHB's operations to our social wellbeing strategy. I don't think there is currently a link to the economic development strategy, and yet medical, the provision of medical services and the university's specialty in that area and specialty services that are associated with that are, I think, quite integral to our economic development strategy going forward. I think our community has demonstrated through things like the Neurosurgery Cheers campaign a real willingness to contribute to the retention of those services if it is possible and makes sense for us to do so. And clearly the SDHB around their table, they don't need to take any of that into consideration, and they wouldn't have the opportunity to do so if we didn't have early engagement with them to understand the nature of their proposed changes, and how we could contribute to changing their minds if that were possible. So I think given that they are clearly signalling in their strategic plan that they may like to change the location of some specialist services, it is incumbent upon us to signal that we would like to engage with them about that, and I think this is our opportunity to do so. So that's why I am proposing the amendment as on there.
Councillor Kelly.
Can I just ask a question? Were we invited to make a submission?
Yes, they sent it to us for us to make a submission should we choose. And it's been put out to the public for public submission.
Yes, I just thought that there's a difference between just anyone who, you know, just opening it for submission and us being individually or being invited to make.
We received it in the mail and it was asked whether we would like to make a submission.
Councillor Murphy.
I certainly support the approach, but I'm just seeking clarity to understand in my own mind what we're driving towards. My understanding is that the Southern District Health Board have suggested that there's a possibility of shifting some services out into the regions, i.e. That's my understanding, i.e. Oamaru, Balclutha, etc. So are we more focused on, is this really looking at making sure we retain the existing services that we have in Dunedin only, and sacrificing potentially any benefits to the region? I know we only represent Dunedin City, but hypothetically, if something was going to be shifted, for example, to Middlemarch or Brighton, it's a ridiculous suggestion, but a service in the health, or some sort of health service in those areas, we'd obviously be supportive of that. However, it's more likely, I think, where you're coming from is on a national basis where we're potentially threatened at losing the neurosurgery scenario. That's where you're coming from, rather than any potential move to the regions that the Southern District Health Board have suggested. Is that?
No, it's a long-winded motion. So my understanding, and I stand to be corrected by Nicola if my understanding of the document is wrong, but I think that the SDHB is looking at the efficiency of their service provision, and that is happening at a national level as well. Clearly there were moves in the case of neurosurgery to move the provision of that service north. My reading of the document is that may be something that may be considered for other specialties, and I think my issue, or what I'm flagging, is that I think we need an early signal of that intent so that we can understand what implications that might have for a range of things, but our economic development as well as our social wellbeing and health services. If we don't have that early signal, then we can't even explore those issues before it's effectively the wheels are in motion.
Councillor Wilson.
I just for mainly for Councillor Calvert's interest, the Tertiary Planning Precinct Planning Group also had a presentation on this and an encouragement to the parties there to submit to it. And I just note that one of the issues when we had the general discussion, that I don't want to get to them level submitting on it necessarily, the importance that this city has actually in preventing ill health as well, and keeping people healthy by the provision of parks, by the walking, cycling, and the infrastructure that we provide, and water qualities and things like that. And the one thing my understanding is it probably doesn't talk to some of that, and how the city actually partners with ensuring people's health. And if there was one other area that it could be strengthened in, but it was a good discussion, albeit brief, around the table. And I don't want to keep on going back to my time in Nelson, but certainly the health benefits of walking and cycling, as the infrastructure we provide for that, as well as parks, cannot be overemphasised, having seen some of the results.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I in general support the submission and most of the recommendations, but I find two quite problematic. And I say that because I'm aware of the overriding comment in the SDHB's report about living within its means, and, well, it's not hard to interpret what that means, and the history of underfunding of healthcare in the southern region. or if you're not going to argue or agree that there's underfunding, of a formula that doesn't work properly for a region as diverse as ours with the demographic that it has. And that's nothing new, and that's been argued for some decades. And I think there's considerable validity in that argument, and I have no doubt that the government would welcome a further statement with big flashing lights around it saying that we really like our specialist services and look at how well we've done in the fantastic community efforts that have happened in the city to fund up areas where we were at risk of losing service. And I think it would be most unwise to include a paragraph like paragraph 2 that reminds people or suggests that we're going to continue with that community preparedness to do things that a lot of people, myself included, would argue should be funded by central government. And so I don't know how you're going to do this procedurally, but for those reasons I can't possibly, much at all as it's a statement of historical fact, I don't think it should live in a document like this, which is telling them it's okay, if you don't fund it, we'll take out the checkbox and have a community appeal so the ODT can run a massive campaign, or the community can fund something that should be core health service provision in this community. If you see what I mean.
Well, in response to that, I'm comfortable with putting those separately. They stand on their own. So I can put it that way, and that gives everyone the opportunity to vote for the bits they want and against the bits they don't. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Peck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support the general thrust of this. I think the most important aspect would be for me that there are no surprises. It's a no surprises signal we're sending to the SDHB that we want to be consulted early on any changes. I looked at 2 a few times to try to kind of see where that was taking us. Contribute is the word that does sort of I stumble on. I mean, actively campaign for, I can accept, but I'm not sure what it's going to produce in terms of affecting the master plan of the District Health Board. I did read that a few times too, but I mean, I think what is suggested here is that we add comment. Is that what we're saying? We add comment. I can accept that then.
Before I put it, and before I ask the mover to exercise the right of reply, as I said, I will put these separately. I take on board the comments of Councillor Benson-Pope, although, and frankly, number 3 implies 2 in any case, to some extent. So either way, it could stay there and it's been repeated in 3, or it could come out and it's implied in 3. So my take on it is that it's probably not necessary to have 2, but I'll probably certainly be supporting the rest of it. Councillor McTavish, would you like to exercise your right of reply?
Well, just in relation to 2, I absolutely take Councillor Benson-Pope's point, and I think certainly I wouldn't be supporting the community stepping into breaches left by inadequate central government health funding. However, I think in a situation where the central government is indicating that it is likely to move to a more population-based funding model, this city may need to find ways to value add to existing services in order to retain them. And I'm not saying that that would necessarily look like funding base level health funding, but it may be things like how we find connections with the university, how we can value add around that service in order to ensure that there is a strong business case over and above population-based funding models for retaining those services, those specialist services. Yeah. Not saying I support that government direction, but just saying that government direction seems to be there, and our role around this table is finding a way to appropriately respond to that to support our community. So I'm pretty relaxed. I think the Mayor's point is good. I think 3 effectively implies 2 anyway. So if 2's voted down, so be it.
All right. Now I'm going to put this, and just thinking about, I think it's the first paragraph and 1, and then I'll take the other 2 in turn. So all those in favour of the first paragraph plus 1, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. All those in favour of paragraph 2, please say aye. Against? Aye. That's lost. All those in favour of paragraph 3, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So that is first paragraph plus 1 and 3. Carried. Thank you. Right, on to item 23, Dunedin New Zealand Masters Games Trust CCO exemption. Welcome, Rebecca. Do you want to preface questions? Right. So I have a question first off, and maybe I'm just a bit slow on this, but it's not clear to me. So, I mean, I see this as a technical thing, but it's not clear to me precisely what the trust doesn't have to do if it's exempted. So.
Yes, we did 3 years ago. It was a paper came before council to put in place an exemption for the Masters Games Trust so that it held CCO exempt status. Strictly speaking, legally it's still a CCO, but it's exempt from all of the requirements of a CCO. We did agree we would review this. We'd try and remember to do it every 2nd year, even though you only have to do it every 3rd. We forgot, and the auditor pointed out that it's about to run out, which is why we quickly pulled this report together. However, it omitted the critical sentence about why we do need to do this from the original report we put up 3 years ago. The reason is that when the Masters Games Trust was established in 2007, it was pulled together effectively as a charitable trust to raise money to run the Masters Games as a charitable not-for-profit purpose. It meets, it has charitable trust status. Unfortunately, what the council staff who put it together at the time didn't realise is that they were setting up a CCO because they appointed the trustees. They didn't realise that, and it went on its merry way doing its business for some time until about 3.5 years ago when that was realised, and we talked to the auditors, and the auditors said we had 2 options. One was to get it exempt status so that it legally complied. The key issue is a special consultative procedure has to be used to set up a CCO unless that CCO has exempt status. And so we should have passed a resolution when we set it up saying this has exempt status. If you choose not to, it meets all of the requirements for having exempt status. It's exactly the kind of arrangement that the exempt status was for, which was, you know, the things that are set out in this report, a small organisation primarily for charitable purposes and so on. The auditor's quite comfortable with that. If you elect not to agree that we tell the auditor we would like it to have exempt status, then in fact what has to happen is we have to dissolve the trust, go out and do an SCP and start it again. So what was decided 3 years ago was that that was just an unnecessary waste of money. We're happy with who they are, what they do. It's been put in their trust deed that they still do all of the statements of intent and the reporting as if they were a CCO. The one thing we don't have to do is dissolve them and re-establish them.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded, but other questions? Councillor Coe.
Just 2 little sort of yes-no-ish questions. I presume the CCO trustee threshold thing is to do with appointing all of the trustees.
That's right, 50% or more, and it's a CCO.
And the second thing is, I presume when it says implications for approved annual budget, doing this doesn't actually have any implications for the approved, that's just...
None. Well, if you decline to approve it, it has an implication for the budget because we have to dissolve the trust and set it up again, but
not the implications described in the report.
So it's been moved. Councillor Loon, seconded Councillor Lord. Any discussion? Anyone want to speak to it? I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And now thank you, Rebecca. I'll move, as per the order paper, that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely items 24 to 28. Second to Councillor Staines. I'll put all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.